listen to me. If you are wise, you'll listen to me.
Hey.
If you are wise, you'll listen to me.
Hey, they say they did it before, Wayne.
The business.
Not like this. Ha! Ha! Hey! They trying to stop us, Wayne. They can't.
All right. Hey, how you doing? This is Teddy from Overdrive Fitness. Today I'm going to discuss basically the importance of in-season training and why it's so necessary for all athletes, not even just the athletes that we have here at Overdrive Fitness. So just to give you a quick rundown of the difference between the two, we're going to start with off-season training. I'm not going to get into detail of what exactly we do in the off-season training because that's not the focus of today's lesson. But basically, here are the key points from the off-season training. In the off-season training is everything. Meaning our off-season athletes, when they're in our off-season program, they're not doing anything else except for school and training, and that's it. All right. The workouts, as far as just lifting, we have a much higher volume, but even on those days, we undulate between a medium and high intensity. Undulating meaning, so if it's a medium intensity day and we're in an above 80% phase, then our medium days between 80 and 85%, sometimes 87.5%. Our high intensity days are between 90 to 95, sometimes 97.5%. Usually we don't go too high. And the focus is always on proper movement, all right? Focus is also on power. Now power, everyone wants to say like, oh, it's always about how much force you can produce. Well, that's only 1/3 of the equation. It's not just force production, it's force acceptance, meaning how well can your body accept force as well as redirect it and reproduce it, or create it, really. So, and these two are really meaningless if you don't know how to apply it, which brings us to our next point. You cannot produce, accept, or apply force properly if you're not mobile or flexible. So that's why we program our mobility and flexibility into the workouts, whether it's in the warm-up, cool down, and in the filler. So our filler exercises, you may have you go through your main compound exercise, and instead of just resting, we'll have you do some sort of active rest, active recovery. We'll have you hit a mobility or flexibility exercise while you're resting, all right? As far as soreness and fatigue, there's no real concern for that in off-season program, all right? If you do feel some sort of soreness or you do get tired, that's fine, right? We can always adjust the workout throughout the week, throughout the month, based on how you're recovering or lack thereof, but we are pushing the envelope to try to get you to recover faster, recover from soreness a lot better, not get as tired as easily. And we do that through our conditioning. So it's not just lifting here, right? Our conditioning is all predicated on how we're lifting also. So we always start with an aerobic base because you cannot have any anaerobic type of work capacity unless you build the aerobic base first, all right? So once you build the aerobic base, your body's able to create more energy. Then we'll move on to anaerobic alactic and or lactic. I write and or lactic because not every athlete in here will need to develop a high anaerobic lactic work capacity. It's all dependent on their sport, all right? So yeah, we are gonna train as it gets closer to the season. We're gonna train baseball and softball differently than lacrosse. Our workouts that we give to the athletes are 3 to 6 days per week. Okay, most kids come in the 4 to 6 day range. A lot of them actually come 6 days a week. All right. Now, in-season training, the focus of today. All right. Training is maintenance. It's not everything. It is maintenance. Your sport is everything. What our training in here is secondary to your sport. Okay. That's the main key because you're coming in here to get better. That's what we do in the off season. Now we need to make sure that you can perform throughout the season at a high level. All right. We lower the volume for the lifting, but it's still high intensity. So you're still going to work with heavier weight. The number one transferable trait from the weight room to the field is confidence. Now, who said that? That was Joe Ken, Carolina Panthers strength and conditioning coach. If you're not in the sports performance industry or even really just the fitness industry, you may not know who Joe Ken is. Joe Ken is their strength conditioning coach. 2015, he was voted by his peers as the strength conditioning coach of the year. Very, very well respected coach, all right? And It's a very basic quote, but it's very simple. It gets the point across. Anyone that feels strong is always going to feel confident. And the second you just start to ignore trying to stay strong, then you will lose that confidence, especially in a physical sport, or really any sport in which you need to create power. Always focusing on power. You're an athlete, right? You're always trying to move forces at a high velocity, whether it be a high force or low force. You're always trying to move at a high velocity and recreate that power, all right? And accept the power also. So we're always focusing on power maintenance while avoiding a steep drop off. So meaning we're gonna have indicator exercises throughout the week to show whether or not your power is increasing, decreasing, or staying the same, right? So how are we gonna calculate that? We're gonna constantly check your body weight. We're going to test your plyo push-up, a 1 plyo push-up, and a 1 counter movement vertical jump. By doing that, what we're going to do is we're gonna be able to calculate power, because power is force times velocity. So we're always checking that. Now, to make sure that we're not just checking peak anaerobic power, we're going to also test your 4 plyo push-up and your 4 counter movement vertical jump to make sure that you're not creating that power in just one, random burst. You can create it over time and consecutively, which is huge as an athlete. Unless, of course, your sport is powerlifting, weightlifting, which is just one explosive movement and then you rest. Okay, so always still working in mobility and flexibility. That's going to help with your recovery. Soreness and fatigue, it's undesirable. We do not want that. We want to avoid it. Will it happen? Yes, it's going to happen. That's why communication between the coach and the athlete is important. In-season training, I always keep in contact with all my athletes. I want them texting me first thing in the morning or at some point in the morning during school, tell me how you're feeling. Are you super sore? Are you somewhat sore, like normal? Or, did you not feel anything at all? We want to avoid the soreness that's going to be debilitating to their everyday life and prevent them from going up and down stairs or even just like opening their locker. Stress management is also huge. The athletes don't really know it. Some of them do know this, but I know a lot of what they do, including I have their school calendars. I have almost all school calendars of the high schools and most schools in the area, so I'm able to keep in mind with the programming when to plug in specific workouts, when to increase, decrease volume based on you have breaks, holidays, any type of day off, or tests like finals, midterms, finals, like any big time like that, regions. We know ahead of time like that's going to create a lot of stress. So stress management is huge for the athlete because no athlete, no body can really differentiate any type of stress. We want to keep their stress to a minimum. When that's to a minimum, we can push the training somewhat, and then recovery will always be prime. All right. Conditioning, we are still going to condition, but it's not going to be crazy. So why are we going to condition? Well, because we want to keep running form in check. We're going to keep it at a lower volume. So normally, let's say our focus on one of our conditioning workouts is on the assault air runner. We're working on running form. All right. Let's say normally for one workout, we'd have them sprint, go all out for 10 seconds, and then rest for 75 seconds, right? We may increase that to a sprint for 10 seconds still, but the rest would be increased to 2 minutes, maybe more, all right? We're gonna check the speed that they hit on the treadmill and then check the rest, right? We want them to be able to hit that speed every single time, but we don't want to tire them out, right? And by doing that, we're also keeping an eye on their running form. You never want an athlete to just like dip off and just drop off in their conditioning to the point where their body isn't used to going through those explosive movements. So that's why a lot of athletes, there's no conditioning or just not a lot in season or enough. If there's not an adequate amount of conditioning, you will start to see injuries like rolled ankles, hamstrings are big, pulled hamstrings, that's huge. We want to avoid all that. So that's why we still keep conditioning to make sure the running form is in check. Because remember, any type of skill or movement is a learned pattern. So we got to make sure that that's still always being practiced. And finally, the frequency, 2 to 4 days per week. All right. Most people only do 2. We do want them, or we allow them to come in 4. It may seem like overkill, but remember, it's what we do in here with the athletes is microdose. It's not an hour of lifting when they come in. It's not an hour of running. And the focus is always on recovery. We want the athletes recovering before they even step foot out of the gym. So That's basically that. And in-season training, there's so much more attention to detail in in-season training. That's why it's so important. And the biggest thing we want to avoid, not only just a power drop-off, but the strength drop-off. And believe it or not, strength is the first thing to go when you start ignoring it for in-season training. So remember, we're just trying to maintain all the hard work that we put in. We're not just trying to just start the season and just throw it out the window. Because once it's gone, it's gone. It's never coming back unless you start putting in the work to build it back up. And if you start too late into the season, you know, you're already behind the 8 ball. You might as well just wait till the end of the season, salvage what you can do, and then you're going to have to work twice as hard in the off season to try to get it back.